Alright, hey everyone, welcome back to Premier Study. Today we're going to be looking at TTOO for the ticker symbol. They go by the name of Ttoo Biosystems. Investors Observer gives them a 48 out of 100 as far as the attractiveness score, meaning that actually 52% of stocks out there are more attractive than what they say Ttoo. We can see a couple things from them. $1.22, negative EPS, $183 million on the market cap. I'm going to put some information up about some of their competitors. My general idea was I had about $700 that I was going to put into Broadcom, and I had a certain price and I was not able to get that. Broadcom kept going up, and finally I realized, what am I going to do once the PE got so high on that thing? And I started looking at some of the volatility that was going on with some of these smaller biotech firms. I knew that a lot of them had already run up quite significantly in March, June, and for the most part, I missed those. So I was looking to see what are these companies, and after either people take profit or the weaker hand sell off or whatever, and it comes back down to a more reasonable price, is it possible to get into these, and what do they have to offer? I think one thing that you have to think of in general is that we saw that news that came out with AstraZeneca and the big pause that they had after 2 of their patients had some kind of inflammation of the spinal cord. There's a lot of people that are really worried. In fact, the FDA, I'm not sure what the regulations are in other parts of the world, but in the FDA, you only really have to show that your vaccine is 50% effective, which means that maybe it doesn't protect certain people, maybe it protects you for a while and it wears off. But for a lot of people, there's low confidence about the vaccines at all. And there's guys that you can find, I'll try to find the video and put it up on the screen for you, of one guy that says, look, we've seen a lot of these corona before, and we've never created a vaccine for it. So to dream up that we're going to be able to pull that off in 9 months, maybe not. He says it's not likely, and so where is that going to leave us? Certainly we can see from August 31st, the headline reads, Ttoo Biosystems Molecular Diagnostic Test receives FDA emergency use authorization. If we read down here, it says that they received the EUA for their test. They also tell us that they call it the Ttoo SARS-CoV-2 panel test, uses the nasal swab, so that's one thing to know. It has a turnaround time of less than 2 hours, and that the test runs on their machine called the T2DX instrument. We're going to find out a couple things. One, we saw that just on this information alone, and now getting EUA approval is a pretty big deal, but the stock price jumped 16.67%. So it's nice. What I'm saying is that Broadcom may kind of grind its way up, and it's done really well. Maybe it wasn't the best thing to even get into all this, especially with their 4% dividend that they pay. But the volatility and the potential here is really big. And it's looking at the whole year. It says the company expects the full year of 2020 total revenue to be between 18 and 20 million. That's the thing that I'm most interested in. The other thing they tell us here, in the US, 60 of their machines are going to be sold. They have contracts that they're expecting to receive in 2020. So if you're buying this for the Rona treatment, they do have this special thing that they have for exactly that virus. The results in under 2 hours. You can put 60 samples through in a day, not in an hour, in a day. And it uses the RT-PCR test, and so that's one of the things that we need to know about. You can go, and like I said, the idea of this is not to give you everything, but to give you enough so that you can decide if you want to go and do more research on your own. So you can read that whole thing. I'll leave it, but this is where we find out that the instrument costs $125,000, and also that the panel test for the bacteria anyway costs $150. If you're still interested at this point in buying any of these companies for their diagnostic purposes, you have to start looking a little bit at the different approaches and the pros and cons of each. So one thing we saw is that the Ttoo Biosystems for the Rona, it takes 2 hours and it uses the PCR. This is usually the slower but more accurate approach that you can use. We see there's other companies, like you can see here on the screen, QuideL Sofia 2 point of care instrument delivers test results for the Rona in 15 minutes. So 15 minutes compared to 2 hours. That's a big difference, and I think everyone would agree. Here's one also from Mesa Biotech, which I think may be private, but double check them. You can see there's 3 point of care companies that they list in this article. Mesa that we just saw, QuideL, which we saw, the 15-minute test, and then Talis Biomedical out of California. I think only this one is publicly traded. I'm not sure. But then you also have lab-based tests. And what we'll find out is there's actually a lot of companies that have been doing these tests, have gotten approved for diagnostic testing. Right. So if I go to the FDA EUA website that I look at quite often, we can scroll down here and we can go to in vitro diagnostic products. And what we can see is that there are 249 entries. And if you go to the second page, you can see the Ttoo biosystems. They use the molecular RT amplification and the magnetic resonance. And so, but there's 250 of these things basically. So being able to sort through all that, if you're going to try to find your, I mean, it's kind of the diamond in the rough. It's the needle in the haystack. Yeah. One thing I saw, this is from the coronavirustoday.com. September 18th, it says to date, the US FDA has authorized 248, which we saw, diagnostic tests under EUAs. 198 of those are molecular tests, 46 are antibody tests, and 4 are antigen tests. So when I'm looking at this, I'm thinking there's no way I'm going to sort through 198 different tests, or 64, or 46 even, 46. So I wanted to just look at these 4 and give those guys to you and let you check them out. So I went here, centerforhealthsecurity.org, and they have basically current molecular and antigen tests with FDA EUA approval. The 4 that are going to come up are going to be, 1, the rapid antigen test from ABT Diagnostic. The second one, LumriaDx out of the UK. The third one is going to be from Becton Dickinson, ticker symbol BD. They're doing the antigen. And the last one is QuideL Corporation has an antigen test. I also just noticed that QuideL also has a PCR test, so maybe that's what the Lyra was. That's probably what that Lyra machine was. Anyway, so QuideL, Abbott, Becton Dickinson, and LumriaDx. Let's look at this first one from Becton Dickinson. Like I said, ticker symbol BD. They say that it uses the nasal swab. That's one important thing to think about, is we're going to go nasal swab, because I'm also going to look at some of these saliva tests that have come out from a couple different places. And so this is their machine. I believe they say it works in 15 minutes. You can see that right here. So that's one important thing to see. That's going to be the same as 2 other companies. So the LumriaDx, it says it can do it in 12 minutes, which is nice. I mean, 3 minutes, I guess, but hey, it's 3 minutes. So finally, if you go to Abbott Labs, you can go to the newsroom, and then the press releases. You can see here they have a $5, 15-minute, easy-to-use antigen test, which receives the FDA emergency use authorization. They can get the results to you on your phone. So we have 3 companies saying they can do it in 15 minutes, 1 company saying that they can do it in 12. So those are the 4 that I would go looking at. Now, the problem with these tests that take only 15 or 12 minutes is that you do have to have that nasal swab, and that might not be very good for kids, especially young children, or it may just be something that people don't want to put up with for forever. But your other option is really waiting 30 minutes. Like I just covered this video on Srne, and so theirs takes 30 minutes. There's a lot of companies that theirs take 30 minutes. One thing we see the NBA doing in the US, the National Basketball Association, is they're rolling with Yale's new saliva test, and so they call it the Saliva Direct, but it does not have anyone, as far as I could find, that is licensing contract to commercialize that. So as far as I know, Yale is just kind of like helping people out, testing this, trying it, seeing if it works. Srne did get the licensing from Columbia University to run a saliva test, but like I said, these usually take 30 minutes, and so that's a little bit slower, but at least you don't have to have someone jab some jousting rod up into your nose. Finally, there is one other piece of information I thought you might like to know on the saliva test. There's this company out of Utah in the United States. They're called Spectrum Solutions. We read here, the approval of Spectrum Solutions saliva collection device gives patients an alternative to the intrusive swab collection typically used to test for the Rona. It says the company that recently announced it obtained approval from the FDA for emergency use authorization for its Spectrum, and they call it the SDNA-1000 saliva collection device. So you might want to check that out. So if you're interested in diagnostic machines, I think that's the real issue, is it's time versus comfort. And then you're going to have some issues with accuracy. So some people said about the Srne test that it wasn't very good against either non-symptomatic people or asymptomatic people, or people who didn't have the disease. So otherwise, I think it's just too many to look through. Almost 200 molecular tests, 46 antibody tests. So I just covered the 4 antigen tests for you, and then we had these excuse me, we have these saliva ones to look at. So I hope that helps. Appreciate you guys. We will talk to you next time.